أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. للذين استجابوا لربهم الحسنى والذين لم يستجيبوا له لو أن لهم ما في الأرض جميعا ومثله معه لافتدوا به أولئك لهم سوء الحساب ومأواهم جهنم وبئس المهاد. أفمن يعلم أنما أنزل إليك من ربك الحق كمن هو أعمى إنما يتذكر أولو الألباب الذين يوفون بعهد الله ولا ينقضون الميثاق والذين يصلون ما أمر الله به أن يوصل ويخشون ربهم ويخافون سوء الحساب والذين صبروا ابتغاء وجه ربهم وأقاموا الصلاة وأنفقوا مما رزقناهم سرا وعلانية ويدرؤون بالحسنة السيئة أولئك لهم عقبى الدار جنات عدن يدخلونها ومن صلح من آبائهم وأزواجهم وذرياتهم والملائكة يدخلون عليهم من كل باب سلام عليكم بما صبرتم فنعم عقبى الدار. صدق الله العظيم.
About us living in the West as we're traveling through the West, and we are constantly coming across these waves of challenges, and really for us to just sit at the tide and have these conversations where we could just slow down somewhat and just talk about how we're navigating, how others are navigating, and how we could share our navigation skills and our knowledge to hopefully get to where we need to be. So alhamdulillah for that. And as always, we start by thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and maybe by thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala we've been fortunate to receive the fruits of this evening. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, لَإِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ, that if you are thankful I will increase you. And definitely anyone who has experienced gratitude, who has entered the state of gratitude, because gratitude isn't just an action. The action sort of takes us to that state. But when we thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we receive His blessings, and one of His blessings is that there's an increase. And so for this to be the third in the series, we're fortunate, alhamdulillah. And it's not just about this series, but also about the project that we'll be speaking about today. There is definitely perseverance in that, and the verse that was mentioned about that if you continue to persevere, that there's a reward for those people who persevere. And so we can see that this is really centralized in our deen for those who want to enter the abode, as was mentioned in the verse of the Quran. And so we're fortunate for that, and we truly want to not just say to be thank you, but to really enter that state of gratitude, and to spend this next evening, an hour and a half of the next evening, of this evening, for us to really be thankful for that, and to appreciate where we are. We're in a place right now where we'll be mentioning Imam al-Ghazali and his works, and his contributions, and how we can take his contributions and apply them in where we are today. And he was centralized around ilm, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Innama bu'ithtu mu'alliman," that I was only sent as a teacher. And we can see that there was a hadith also where there was two circles of majalis. There were two gatherings that were taking place, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam entered, and there was one of teaching, and there was one of dhikr. And the Prophet ﷺ, through his action, showed us which one he preferred at that point, was that he sat with the one of ilm. Because in the ilm, in the gathering of ilm, there is also remembrance of God, but there is also contribution to here and now in what we're doing. And so we see this, that our deen was centralized and focused around ilm, and this project in particular will be around ilm. And so we're very fortunate for that. And Imam al-Ghazali also opens his Ihya with the Kitab al-Ilm, so he can see where he put knowledge in all of this. Today we're very fortunate to be joined by Sister Aisha Gray Henry. And for those of you who may know or who may not know, I'll just mention a few things about her. She graduated in world religions and the history of art, and she has a master's in education and has specialized in curriculum development. She has authored two books, one book, Understanding Islam and the Muslims, and another, The Life of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And she studied, which I'm really, mashallah, is quite impressive, that she studied 10 years in Al-Azhar and spent many years, 45 years actually, involvement with studying in the Muslim world and traveling in the Muslim world. And so we're very fortunate that there's a wealth of experience here and knowledge for us to really take from. And she has that experience in publishing since 1979. And currently this project that she's been working on for a while now is the Ghazali for Children's Project. And it's basically translating the 40 books of the Ihya for the ages of 12 to 15-year-olds. Though here at this school we've been teaching children younger than that and some children older than that. And as we know about Imam al-Ghazali, that he has a universal language that speaks to people of all ages. But we'll speak about how he does that.
It's really from 3 on.
Okay.
3 to 90.
Okay, so it's yeah. Well, there you go. So we're gonna see, inshallah. So we'll start the evening off by a presentation from her, and then we'll have a discussion after. There'll be some questions from myself, and then towards the end, inshallah, we'll open it to you guys. And if you have any particular questions, you guys can ask, inshallah. So round of applause, inshallah, for Sister Aisha. Jazakallah khair.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I couldn't be more delighted to be with you. This is really exciting. What brought me here is that the Ghazali, what brought me here is that the Ghazali Children's Project now has approximately 131 pilot schools throughout the world. And the pilot schools are, everyone's saying, we have the books, we have the workbooks, we have the curriculum. We don't know what to do with it. And then Blessed Adiba phoned me up a few weeks ago, and I realized that this wonderful school, the Hub Club, figured it out. You're like the amazing role model for all the schools. And I just can't tell you, I think I wept on the phone. It was so lovely speaking with Adiba and hearing about the creativity and the love of the teachers and what's gone on in this school. So she invited me here. I was just in Bosnia with Abdul Hakim Winter and other friends, some of whom are here. And so I'm just delighted to have this chance to present an overview and the thinking behind this project. It may be repetitive for some of you, but we'll just go from there. So, Sheikh Abdul Hakim Murad, whom you all know from the Cambridge Muslim College in Cambridge, notes, if the Quran tells us that the heart is the essence of man, so that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam on his ascension saw the highest perfection with his heart, that's Quran 53:11, and if revelation itself descended on his heart, then the heart is the unique interface of the eternal and finite realms. So this is incredible that now we're going to be working with the image of the heart. And that's, I've been talking to some little children here before, and they all love the fact that we're focused on the heart. Let's see, how do you make it go? This one? That? Oh, that's it. I just wanted to, oh, did it come up, the logo? All right, wait, this? Or do we gonna, do you think we should dim the lights for this, or you all can see it all right? All right, I just want to go back to the last image. There it is. This is the logo of Fons Vitae, and I only tell you this because I was just in the war. I worked in the camps at the very end of the war in Mostar. I visited a little lady. Her home was on stilts and the bridge was down, and outside there was a little wooden box with a sheepskin on it, and that symbol of the tree of life with flowers on it became the symbol of Fons Vitae. And the name Fons Vitae, my publishing company, was named by Abdul Hakim Winter. My previous company was the Islamic Text Society. And good. All right. Regarding the purification of both the outward and the inward, Abdul Hamid Ghazali wrote that one should know with certitude that the purification of the heart comes through ridding the soul of its vices and reforming it with virtue, and that a person who stops at outward purification alone is like someone who wants to invite a king to his home and then busies himself with decorating and polishing its front door and leaving the inside full of rubbish and debris. The Ghazali Children's Project aims to establish from the start of a child's life reflexive habits such as humility, patience, loving service, trust and to surrender to God's will, gentleness, and forbearance, while providing children with real and effective tools to address such failings as selfishness, backbiting, arguing, laziness, envy, bragging, hypocrisy, greed, wasting time, and pride. I know the school has just finished the Book of Knowledge, and Ghazali says you can't do any of those things, period, and explains why. Children need to be raised as spiritual beings who are self-observant and self-correcting. The project has seen how 4- and 5-year-olds recognize and are drawn to spiritual truths. I've certainly seen it with a 5-year-old granddaughter. Ghazali's writings are filled with profound metaphysical stories which are easily adapted for the very young. Teachings need to engage the imagination and the spirit of children and attract their enjoyment and delight. A child needs to be handed back his or her dignity and religion in a way that he or she can understand religion, understand what it is really for, and therefore truly desires consciously to keep his or her innate goodness and nobility of character intact, not from fearing hell or parental displeasure, but because he or she comes to consciously experience and identify with this true and higher self. Ghazali constantly speaks of the true self and the real self. This is connected to our fitra, but unfortunately in life, people go around identifying with the nafs al-amara, the lower egoic thing, and their package. I can't imagine saying, I am Gray Henry from Louisville, Kentucky, and I went to this college. Is that me? No, that's a packaging I'm using right now, but I'm really, the real self, the fitra inside. The Ghazali Children's Project envisages that children for generations to come will be able to understand that their faith is about the interior process of perfecting the spiritual heart and eliminating base character traits, which accumulate when the true nature of the heart is neglected. 8 years ago, Hamza Yusuf Hansen telephoned heartbroken that his children were studying in an Islamic school and that it was not working out. He suggested we collaborate in undertaking this monumental task of publishing the Imam al-Ghazali's 11th century 40-volume magnum opus, The Revival of the Religious Sciences, as an educational package recrafted for families and schools. He added that human beings are on a momentous journey, and the Ihya is a map, the Quran presented in a step-by-step way of realizing the true inner and outer sunnah. Regarded in the Muslim world over the centuries as the greatest compendium of Islamic spirituality and ethical behavior for everyday life, the Ihya lays down practical teachings and explains how the outer aspects of Islam can, through their inner spiritually transformative meanings, change every situation, into one that strengthens the innate human nobility of character. The Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, said, I was only sent to perfect good character. What you're seeing right now is the 2011 Dar al-Minhaj edition, a critical edition of the Ihya Ulumuddin. This means that recently they have collected all the pieces, from the various libraries, whether it's Mali and put them all together. So the edition we chose to work on was this latest compilation of everything up to date, not an old Ihya Ulumuddin. This detail demonstrates how this critical edition brought together all the known manuscripts from Sarajevo to Timbuktu. To date, Ghazali is loved by the entire world, but reading him in Arabic or Persian has always been very difficult. The majority of Muslims in the world speak English today, but translations of some of the Ihya volumes have been done in such a scholarly manner that the average person finds them too hard to understand. And I just will admit, I published these books, the Islamic Text Society, from Abdul Hakim Winter, who was at the time 22 or 23, and I was in my 30s, having just come from Azhar and opened the Islamic Text Society in England. And just to be honest with everyone here, I love Ghazali. I read his autobiography when I was 22 years old in New York Public Library, and I couldn't believe it. When he said, I'm finding my soul is on a crumbling bank, up and away, if not now when. And my hair stood on end. Even at 22, having studied all the great faith traditions, you know at 22 what's going on. You know that it's all about the emptying yourself of all but God. You know it's about humility and service, and yet we're totally tangled up in just about everything else but that. And suddenly, here he was saying it, and I just thought, oh, gosh, and I loved him. And then when I started to read these wonderful books, they were, here was my problem. I'd be on a page of one of these books, and I'd be like hanging on by my fingernails, and it was subtle and profound and celestial, and I couldn't understand it, to start with, but I couldn't get my arms around it because it was drifting off in levels of subtlety. So how could I use it in my daily life? That was a problem. And I started fading away inside. I thought, I'll never be able to read Ghazali, never be able to use him in my own life. And then we've set about creating these educational packages for parents, teachers, and children, and they're all over there for the display. What we're doing is we've gotten scholars from all over the world who are like Abdul Hadi Honorkamp from Georgia, a great, profound scholar of the inner life, of Tirmizi, of many things. And he translated the Kitab al-Ilm, the Book of Knowledge. It took him a long time. The Book of Knowledge, the first book, like the Fatiha is to contain the Quran, the Book of Knowledge is said to contain the whole 40 books. It's really, really something. And he really worked hard. And then we have editors, and what we've done is we're making this series in English that you or I could read, that a mother could read, a school teacher could read. And from that, I then sit with it and figure how in the world can you then, you know, you can say that to a 5-year-old. So although I imagine myself whispering these stories after figuring out what can be said, I can't leave out one thing. It has to be in Ghazali's order. In fact, in the back of the Book of Knowledge, you can go, and it gives every single chapter, and it shows what pages in the adult book the ideas came from. So here's the workbook, and then we have a DVD showing how to teach it to kids who can't read, and then to bigger kids in sort of discussion groups. And there's a video of Hamza Yusuf talking about the critical importance of Al-Ghazali in our life today. And then here's the Book of Creed, Book of Belief, and its workbook. And then the Book of Purity. And we've now included in the Book of Purity and the Book of Prayer, we've included the workbook and the curriculum inside of them. And we have a main character, Hajj Abdullah, someone who's made the pilgrimage to the center, and Abdullah. And he, in each book, becomes a different culture, because this is every man. The present one in the Book of Zakat is Somali. So I don't even know which place this one is from. Maybe you all can guess. But this is the transmitter. So that we have book sets that are available, and the Book of Prayer has just come out now. And now, right now, I'm just finishing the Book of Charity, the Mysteries of Zakat and Fasting. And then we have also a little beautiful book, The Life of Imam al-Ghazali. It's for parents and teachers, you know, showing where he lived, the stories about the thieves taking away his notebooks, his reflection, should I leave, should I stay, and when he starts realizing his true nature, his heart. I mean, he lived 400 years after Islam had gotten going, and then he saw already, oh, there's a problem. Now here's, we also have, it's not there, oops. Oh, we have the workbooks for the children. This is some of the supportive thing workbooks. And then there are also cartoons and comic strips. Here's The Life of Ghazali as a comic strip for older kids to read. And then on the website, we have an interactive website called GhazaliChildren.org, which is got something for everybody. It's got curriculum for the children. You all have a curriculum, but you can see what different schools are doing in different places. We have the pilot school program. Anyone can sign up with even if you just have a group of children who come in on Sunday, we can give you all of the books as PDFs, and then you can simply print out pages of workbooks to give to your children. And then we just, I mean, it doesn't matter what age group, and these are many different places. Here the children are in Bradford. Here's a group in Berkeley. This group is called the Conference of Hearts. It's women teachers from all the different schools who get together who have worked on the curricula, and camps. And then, of course, it's been presented in Indonesia, in Rabat, you know, all over. Here, the Islamia schools in London. Bradford, Saudi Arabia. We have a few schools, Dar al-Fiqh in Saudi Arabia. And then here's what the website looks like when you open it. It's a heart walking along, listening to birds, and it polishes itself off when things jump out. But then the website has things about who is Ghazali, all the core teachings, little videos showing everything. There's a library. You can go to any book and your children can do flip pages, their flip books just with their fingers, so they have, this is a way to have your children go to things where they're enjoying being on the internet or doing a computer, but everything is wonderful for them. You know, and here are downloads, things that they can download to do, things that very much support all the teachings. We don't have time to stop and look at all of these. But here's the thing that everybody likes. We watch this website and we see what is visited. And one of our techniques is the problem with, you can tell children, share, be merciful, be generous. It's very abstract. You know, parents are always telling kids stuff like that. Well, with my own grandchildren, I noticed they don't share, right? So we came up with the idea of having the fun of acting it all out. So I said, all right, play not sharing. You can't imagine how much fun they have. No, you can't hold my truck. You certainly can't have any of my candy. And you let them play and they're laughing and they enjoy being bad, and they say, now play act sharing. And you have, would you like to have one of my cookies? Would you like to hold my bear? And suddenly they discover that it felt better, it was easy, and they didn't lose anything by it. So these things you're looking at on here, they're just a smattering. We have people from all over the world sending in, I say, some of the funniest things you've ever seen in your life. We can't believe it when another one comes. You know, it's like a little girl from Sialkot, Pakistan, had her dolls acting out gossiping and backbiting, and then they had to go back and apologize. And, you know, people, I mean, there's one, you know, Ghazali mentions you shouldn't snoop or spy on people, right? So some children came up, they're all in a classroom, and the teacher says to the little girl, would you stay after? I have something to tell you. And she tells her friends, I'll see you out in the hall. And then the friends leave the door open, and they hear what he said, and then they go and tell everybody. Cut to, oh, why did we do that? Cut to, the teacher says, stay after class. The friends shut the door and go about their business, and she rejoins them. So whatever people do, they then show the correct way. And it's just, the most amazing thing we got were some children from Somalia where they were having a drought. And Ghazali had spoken about the importance of kindness to animals and all creation. And they actually, the whole film is about taking old water bottles that are blowing around, turning them into places for water and bird seed for the birds, because the birds were all dying. And here's two little girls from Australia. You wouldn't believe it, the cutest thing in the world. Their mother wrote and said, actually, the project was for her. She said, for this first time, I'm a conscious mother. Oh, they're talking. I'm not going to show this. It's very cute. Okay, and then we have contests. And even if you're late for the contest, it doesn't matter. Send in our entries. Children's things are posted, and we have such resources of all sorts for parents and teachers. And actually, the website is a great resource. And then for parents, people are sending things in all the time so that you can go and benefit from what other teachers. And I think you're joining a forum, aren't you now? A forum with the school in Lahore. There's a school that's opening up in Lahore, and there's one in Chicago, the Prairie Academy. And I'm putting them all together with the Hub Club so that they can start a forum. And then we have a great advisory committee. Mustafa Abu Sway, you see here. He's the Ghazali scholar who is the imam at the Al-Aqsa Mosque. The other man, Timothy Giannatti, a great Islamic scholar. He was the one who washed Muhammad Ali's body and actually helped bury him, and he helped design the incredible event after Muhammad Ali died, you know. So we have lots of good people, just a few of them, you know, everyone from Cat Stevens to Walid Mossad. There's Brother Yusuf Islam here. and then a teacher's forum. I'm just going through this to let you know there's all kinds of stuff to do, books, lots of videos from all the people you love and know. And then, here's children's drawings about the two hearts. And the way I teach them, like my 5-year-old granddaughter, I can do the whole first 10 chapters of Ghazali's Book of Knowledge in about 3 minutes. What I say to these little people who barely speak English, is, children, did you know there are two kinds of learning? And there's what? Yeah, there's normal, everyday learning, and then there's the special, real learning. Oh, what's that? Oh, that's how to polish your heart. What? Oh, you didn't know you had two hearts, right? You have the one that pumps the blood, and so when you cut your finger, but then there's the real shining heart. Like when I'm talking to you, am I talking to your ear or your nose, your arm, or your brain? No, you have a brain, you have a heart. Who has this body? So that's the one I'm talking to your spiritual heart. And so then of course they immediately want to say, well, why would you have to polish it? Oh, didn't you know it gets a little dust on it? If you don't mind mommy, if you're difficult, if you're moody, if you whine. Yeah, but why would you have to get rid of the dust? Oh, you didn't know, but there were two worlds. Oh, two worlds? Yeah, this one you're in right now, lots of difficulties, everybody's promised trials, loss of what you thought would happen, loss of lives, loss of health. But this is a quick run through. And then with the polished heart, you go to the next world, and that is where you have everything you want. That's the paradisal realm, you see. So then the children, they've got the whole package. And so my granddaughter went in the living room, and my son-in-law, Mustafa, was playing the harpsichord, and she said, what's that? He said, that's Bach. She said, who is that? He said, oh, he died about 250 years ago, and she went, he's not dead, he's in the next world. Now, this is a 5-year-old who's just been handed the history of the whole lens of what life is for and how to do it. And that took, 5 minutes? And then I just reinforced it at every moment. It's pretty easy. And of course, what we ask people to do is to draw their own hearts and then put dots in them and talk about what the problems are. What have they done wrong? And I can have them lying on the floor drawing hearts and listening. This is for not minding mommy. This is for shouting. They know exactly what they do, And here's some of the drawings they do are just absolutely wonderful. And this little boy, his mother was standing by when I asked him the question, and he said, and this is for being loud in the cinema. And the mother was like, I've told him 1,000 times, and he knew all the time, and of course he was aware of it and never let her know, just like this. Well, so he wrote, this is for the dot for the cinema. The children love the whole idea of the polished heart. And of course, in the workbook, which body are you nourishing? We have different wonderful I have to spend some time on this story. The chapter on backbiting, I rewrote it 22 times. And I couldn't decide whether to keep in the part about, from the Quran, that backbiting is the same as eating your brother's dead flesh. I thought, is that the most disgusting image in the Quran? Maybe hell. But and I thought, why not? It's the Quran, kids can take it. So I put it into the script somehow. And then I went out to dinner with a bunch of my lady friends, and one of my best friends' father wasn't there, and her father's a frightening person, really horrible. And everyone was talking about him, and I had a story that was so funny and so horrible. I told it. And then I got in the car, I was driving home, and I started feeling queasy. And I got home, and I ran in the bathroom, and I threw up. And I thought, that isn't a metaphor in the Quran. That's actually what's going on, and we have so many veils, we can't see it. It's not a metaphor. And then recently, I've been finishing the book of fasting, and a lady came to the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, and she said, I can't finish the day of Ramadan. I'm just too weak. And he said, she said, I need to break my fast. And he said, oh, you've already broken it. You gossiped. And he said, take this bowl and throw up. And it was pieces of flesh and blood. I mean, I started thinking about how, I'm not talking about other religions, about Muslims. She's going to hell, he's a kafir, that religion's no good. Why don't we shut up? I think Ghazali says you cannot ever backbite. And after this project, after this chapter, I can't do it anymore because I get it. And then one day a lady called me up and she said, gosh, I was at a ladies' party and my daughter whispered in my ear, Mom, are you backbiting? I said, may I speak to Lena? Lena is 7. I said, Lena? She said, Auntie, my mother read me the chapter on backbiting. I had never heard about it. And then I thought, wait a minute. My mother mentioned maybe 4 times as I grew up, if you don't have something nice to say about someone, don't say anything at all. And always, when someone dies, one of the greatest things you can say is, they never spoke ill of anyone. And all of a sudden, I'm realizing, why is it all day long we aren't saying in our family, to our children, what are you doing? It's out of control, and it has to come to a stop. And everything Ghazali tells you we can't do anymore, like arguing, like being angry, all of these things are really what they're doing is they're strengthening the nafs and keeping you from being empty and present to others and serving. I was just telling people there's a movie that's very big in America now called RBG, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She was a woman who came as an immigrant as a child, and before her mother died when she was graduating from high school, her mother said, there are 3 things you can never do. Never argue, never raise your voice, and never be angry. And this woman became the Supreme Court Judge of America. She fought to get women getting equal rights and all the rest, and rose to the very top. And by the way, when you're watching the film, she never watched television. She never engaged in small talk. She worked till 10 o'clock every night and changed all these laws. And her enemies in the court were saying things like the people she fought to the death on said, yeah, we fought with her, but we love her. Now, what if none of us ever did those ego-strengthening things? Imagine if in the world people didn't backbite, didn't argue, and didn't get angry. They just spoke, they just talked to each other. Can you imagine what would happen? And when the brother here earlier talked about being the Bangladeshi translator in the courts and how all these terrible trials that he's doing with the Bangladeshi people, half the stuff is because people have spoken badly about each other. You know, it's just the backbiting that's carried on. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is that Ghazali really does an amazing thing of making the things we can't do very clear, period. And if you give this to your children early enough, their fitra will recognize all this because they haven't been messed up like we have. And they can see it, and they just won't do it anymore. The story of the ant and the pen, which is a big one of Ghazali, because, you know, one of the things is, I rewrote it slightly for children because Ghazali said we're like ants, and then the ink in front of us is what's going on today. Did I pick up the dry cleaning? Have I cooked dinner? Shall I pick up the school? And then we can see what's causing these things. Oh, you know, that's the little pen top. But really, we can't see the higher and higher and higher realities that are causing us to be here rather than there, me here with you right now rather than in Kentucky. And so what I did was, and this is very important because you'll discover this, I had a story where the little baby ants are told by their parents, we're going to the ant zoo. Oh, they were so happy. And then they're told, the relatives are coming, we're not going. And then little ants said, but you said we were going. You promised, you know, and then the moping, you know, what children do. And then after the relatives left, they put on the ant radio only to discover that a lion had gotten out. It was a raging mess at the zoo. And the parents said to the children, you see, God loved us so much, he sent the relatives, so we didn't go to the zoo. So my grandson recently, we live on the edge of the Ohio River, which is the northern border of Kentucky, and the grandchildren are very little and they go to school, but they'd never been on the river, and my husband has a boat with a motor on it. So it was a big deal to get it down there, to get little life preservers, borrow them from people. It was huge day. And then little Bilal is too sick to go. So the trip, we can't go, right? Then I find out that there were terrible storms in Cincinnati. Logs were in the river, mud, and it would have been a disaster if we'd gone out in this little boat. So we went to see him. He was lying in bed, and I told him what had happened, and that because he was ill, it really saved us. We didn't end up out on the river. And you never know whether children hear anything you say. And then we're at a little Sunday school talking about things, and he told all the other children, he said, I got sick, and it was God planned that way, so we didn't have to go out. And so they get it. So let's not say that 5-year-old children can't get the whole picture. And they're in the same boat. I mean, we don't either get it, So anyway, there are many stories we won't go through, and videos and fun things. This is just a story Ghazali says. He says, we're all teachers. It's really important because everything we do is teaching. And so you children are teachers too. Don't you copy everybody? Don't you copy, I have to have the same shirt he has. A woman, I have to do my eye makeup this way. We're copying each other. So you say to the children, so everything you do you want it copied? And then, of course, Ghazali mentions the story about, if a lion got out of a cage and was nearly killing you and somebody saved you, wouldn't you thank the person who saved you? Well, what about thanking the teacher who's just saved your whole spiritual life? So that's something. And then also it's explained that Ghazali, and this is a children's drawing of it, Ghazali mentions that in the Quran, the whales in the sea and the ants on the land ask God to bless the good teacher, and the angels stroke them with the wings. Maybe you remember the story where the little girl said, well, I want to be prayed for by ants, and I want wings to. So, these are children's drawings. Get your children to draw everything. When I read, I always say after each story, please just write the part that interested you most. And that's what they need. The part that interested them most is the thing they're taking from it, and they'll never forget their drawings. There's a whale and an ant, and then, there's one day, my older granddaughter took the toys from my little granddaughter, and who went screaming off, and I said, which self took the toys? And she drew herself up and said, not my real self. Now, this is a huge thing, because if you constantly tell your children, you're naughty, go to your room, you did it again, they're going to start identifying with the nafs al-amara, or the outer package. And I suffered from this as a child. I actually thought I was a bad person because I didn't help mother in the kitchen. But the whole point of this project is to get children to realize who they really are, the inner fitra, identify with that. So instead of saying whatever we say, you did it again, we could just say, that's beneath your dignity. Let's get it right. Let's start speaking to people as who they really are. And then, of course, we have this character, Hajj Abdullah, who switches from culture to culture. Just a quick thing on the Book of Purification, making wudu. So before we get into what Ghazali says you have to do in each phase of the wudu, Hajj Abdullah tells the children a story. Once upon a time, there was a scholar in the village, and an old man came like this. Oh, scholar, what is wudu? What is wudu? And the scholar is trying to get rid of him. He goes on, and finally the scholar thought, it's easier just to show him how to do wudu and get rid of him. So he showed him, and the old man did it, but got it all backwards and wrong. Get out of here, leave, he said. And then he said to his helper, could you follow that old man? We're Muslims living in an Islamic town. How could an old man not know how to do wudu? Follow, see what's going on. So the gatekeeper comes back and says to the scholar, oh, scholar, I'm sorry to tell you this, but that old man is the village holy man, the elder. So the scholar puts on his robe and he goes to the poor part of town and he kneels down before the old man and said, what is wudu? Explain wudu. And he said, whenever you washing your hands, you're saying, May God forgive me for what I have done. May what I do please you. Rinsing your mouth for what I have said and what I may say, what I listen to. My feet, may they carry me to where I please you. And of course, for the children, they're thinking, this is great. We're trying to polish our hearts. And now we get 5 times a day to really look over what we've done, not so great, and turn to Allah for help. So then suddenly the wudu becomes this incredible, and that's the whole thing of polishing the outer door and leaving the inside dirty when the king is coming. And then the whole beauty of sound. And then book 2, the Book of Belief, I broke with the storyline. We had something amazing happen. Someone in Abu Dhabi said kids like time travel. So we just simply had these children who'd come in for afternoon prayer. They're sitting praying, and then they don't run back to play. They're just sitting there, very peaceful. And suddenly the little boy says, wait, there's a door opening up in the middle of the room. It's light. Somebody's stepping down into the room. And of course they realize it's Imam al-Ghazali. And he said, I've come to answer your questions because you're such good and wonderful children and you have such good questions. And of course this reinforces the idea of the next world. But then Maha says to him, who and what and where is God? And I've understood today that there is an imam here in your town who is using the Children's Book of Knowledge of Ghazali to actually teach adults because it's so clear and so simple. This picture of Ghazali here, I was in Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan near where he would have been, and I photographed this man off a portrait in a museum because I thought, I bet Ghazali is a little in that direction. We have other books. The painting, this is the Marvels of the Heart. We've done that also for children and parents. We always put it's just a wonderful story. And then we put parents section from the Marvels of the Heart showing the meaning of the reflective heart. And you know, we just, the project is moving here and there. Here it was presented in Indonesia, and that was wonderful. And they did a big project in Marrakesh for the Ghazali project. It's considered that Fons Vitae is really making an effort to preserve the heritage for the modern world. And this is up in Bradford a couple of years ago, presenting it in bookstores and different conferences. Maha al-Faisal, King Faisal's granddaughter, is doing her version. This is the Book of Knowledge for children in Arabic. But Azhar University has now just done the Book of Knowledge already, and others for the Azhar school system. So we're very delighted that if Azhar, where I studied for 10 years, is putting this children's version into Arabic for their youth, that's a very good recommendation. Something really wonderful. A wonderful lady, her name is, I'll just show you her picture here. Yeah, Lubna Saira, the Lahot Foundation, they're putting it into Urdu, and already the first 2 books are in Urdu, and they're being taught in rural Pakistani schools. And there's Ghazali coming through. And then, I mean, this is beautiful. In the Book of Prayer, Ghazali says that if you call the Adhan out in the wilderness, a multitude of angels come. And when we were in Bosnia, we were on a mountaintop outside Sarajevo, and the Imam called a prayer, and there were all these beautiful people, and I thought, look at this, you know. Now the thing about the Book of Prayer, this changes your prayer, because what's happening is, Ghazali says, do you think it really is just the moving of your mouth and the bending of your body and you're not present? You know, you have to be utterly present. Would you, if you were standing before a king, would you be thinking about something else and fiddling around? But it's very hard to be present. So what you have to do is in the opening takbir, let's see if we get to the opening takbir somewhere. I guess we missed that. Okay, we'll just go back to the opening takbir. If you can just get yourself present before him, just for a moment, and maybe it'll be 2 moments, and maybe you can last through the takbir, and then one day, possibly, it will extend further. And then he says, then when you get into the actual positions of prayer and the Fatiha, every single position and every line in the Fatiha requires a different state of being. Like if you're saying, Ihdina Sirata, you need to have a state of contrition and lowliness and asking for help and guidance. But perhaps if you're saying, glory be, subhanallah, that should be a state of reverence. And I thought, how in the world is this ever going to be taught to children? So then I went and started trying to do it in my prayer. To start with, it's easy. And secondly, it changes your prayer. If you're praying and suddenly you're going into a state of reverence, standing in this way, it starts opening out. The whole thing becomes full of light. It goes into infinite dimensions. So it's like as though I had never prayed before in my whole life. So anyway, have fun with it. All right, then working right now in Zakat. Oh my goodness, I have the children at a merry-go-round in the park, and they're seeing kids who can't ride because they have no money. And they're thinking, oh, they can't come. And then they go to visit Hajj Abdullah in the magic garden, and this man is kneeling at the gate of the garden saying Lillah. So when they run into Hajj Abdullah, they say, why are some people rich and some people poor? And the explanation is off the charts, that it's like, to start with, we don't own anything. When we say lillah, it's for the sake of God, but it's also because it already belongs to God. So we don't have anything, any of us. It's all on loan. It's an amana. The whole thing is a trust, and we think we own it, And then I'll just show you. Let me skip the next picture, and I'll show you something he says. This is like when you give zakat. The children were sitting with their grandfather, and he was a beekeeper, and he said, you have to give from your best. You don't give zakat, or charity from what you just don't want, or it's not nice, or it's old, or something. So he was giving his orange honey, and they said, but that's your best honey. He said, you give your best. But then there's a story Ghazali does to show you about the fact that we don't own anything. He tells that there was a king, and the king gave one man lands and cattle and crops so that when people were hungry, he would feed them. So see this man here. He goes to the town. He's told to bring food, and he holds it up high so the people have to reach up and beg, and he feels disdain. They're lower than he is. He's giving to them. He forgets it's not his. He thinks it's his by now, like all of us. We think it's ours by now, right? And so this is a horrendous, and the poor people reaching up are thinking, next time he comes to town, are we going to have to watch his horse? Is there something after it? Then the other man, who was given banking and gold, was told there's a widow and she needs to educate her children. So he holds the gold low and thanks her, begs her. He begs her, will you take the money in order to help me fulfill my duty and obligation to God? The whole thing is turned around. And then they talk about it, and he says, it's much rougher being rich because it's very hard not to be greedy. It's very hard. If it weren't, he talked about all the levels in which people give. The reason there's the cat is because people even just don't give enough. Anyway, and then there's the modes of giving. Do you give to be seen by people? Well, you can do a check, if there's a fundraiser, but only if you're not doing it to show off, like this little girl showing off. And how you give, so that it's the subtleties of giving. Anyway, in the end, I'm just going to end here because I've talked too much. This is just a beautiful thing about fasting. Why is it so special of all the ibadat of Allah? And Ghazali says, well, sure, the whole earth and everything in it is Allah's and sacred, but the haram is especially sacred to him. And fasting is like the haram among the ibadat. And then things the children learning patience and about patience. One of the wonderful things, this is the last thing I'll show you, is that it's talking about in Ramadan doing the last 10 days, the ihtikaf in the mosque. And I was just going to end with that. And then I went to the local Louisville, Kentucky, Louisville Islamic School, and the mosque attached to it was letting children come in to do 10 days with their sleeping bags. And there's little reading and practicing of Quran and all this. Why not get everybody used to being quiet? Why can't that be learned and become what you do for the rest of your life? So I'm just ending there. And if there are any questions, I think I've gone beyond my time. But anyway, I've tried to present just a flavor of this whole project. And the aim is really to give our children and ourselves a new lens through which to see our daily lives and the reality of emptying ourselves before God. Thank you very much.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you very much for that. You know, Ibn Ata'illah Secondary, one of the great scholars in Islam, he says something very interesting in his hikam. He says that one of the signs of the acceptance of an action, so one of the sign from... Is it on?
You're supposed to be using the mic. Oh.
Yeah, I switched to it's off mute. Sorry. He says one of the signs of the acceptance of an action is that you see the fruits of the action in this world. So we can see that. Bismillah. We can see that what we've just seen right now on this presentation, was the fruits. And so if anyone, you know, when seeing this, I mean, Ibn Ata'illah is telling you that if you want to see that this is accepted, you'll see the fruits of it. Because who wills the fruits to come into existence? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has seen an intention somewhere, and He has seen the hard work, and He's seen the actualization of that by the project. But then when it bears fruits, that's one of the signs of the acceptance. So
This group. That's
inshallah,
that's
yeah,
you.
inshallah.
It's for you.
Inshallah. So Jazakallah khair again, and I just want to. So conversations is supposed to be a bit intimate. So I want to know just a bit about yourselves. We can't go around and ask everyone for their names and where they're from. But just a quick question. Just please put your hand up if you've heard of this project before coming here today. Okay, alhamdulillah, thank you. And put your hand up if you work with children, if you have children of your own, or if you're teaching anywhere in madrasa and schools or anything like that. Okay. And the last question, if you've actually taught this program before at home or in any other place, in any other madrasa or anything like that. Okay. All right, interesting. So we know where. Okay. Wonderful. So now we'll just go into a few questions. So the first question I had for yourself was, why Imam al-Ghazali? Why his works from the many scholars?
Well, I think what he did was absolutely extraordinary. To have a personal crisis and realize he was teaching at the Baghdad University and that he was proud and that he was teaching and he was a hypocrite and he went through the crisis. Shall I leave? And I'm Mr. Number One, you know, and my wife and daughters, what about them? And finally, God in His mercy removed Ghazali's voice so he couldn't speak. And then he went out for 10 years, coming back and forth to see his wife and children, and was able, he became a janitor in Damascus. And he was able to finally go beneath each of the things that we are taught and see what the inner spiritual transformative methodology was in everything we have. And if you think about it, every moment in our lives, to me, life is like a setup. It's like I was always going to be here today from all time, right? And they're ayat. And every moment, if you're not busy talking, screaming, carrying on, if you're just quiet, a person comes up to you, a thing happens, something moves, we're given everything we need to do what we're supposed to be doing. And Ghazali really made that really clear to me.
Well, I mean, it's quite interesting because there's that famous story. So for those who weren't too familiar, so he was a scholar who had reached the pinnacle in scholarship in his time. He was teaching at the best university, he had the best position, and then he had this crisis, as was mentioned. And one of the interesting things was that it was actually his brother who... Ahmed, who actually said to him that, you know, you read all these books, but have you ever read yourself? And in reading himself, and then he was able to write this book, and then, you know, we have this manual almost.
I really think what's going on is that we're in such a critical condition in the world today that this is exactly what's needed at the last second, you know, at the 11th hour to come in. It's just amazing how it's coming through. I have no sense of it. I mean, it's really hard to do, and I'm doing about 17 hours a day, really. but it's like, I don't feel it and it's not mine. This is not like any publishing project I've ever had. It's on its own, you know? And just to see the people come forth, like the people here today, and who have come forth to help, and illustrators and so on, we're just watching something take place right now. Mm-hmm.
Well, it's also interesting. I remember Dr. Omar once saying to us that never is Imam al-Ghazali mentioned except that he's present. So take that as you wish, on whatever level. But it's interesting because we were saying how in teaching it this past year, we felt that there's something else going on. The teachers are sincere. I feel that there was sincerity in this project, and also, I mean, children are always sincere. And in the absence of us, I guess there's something else that's taking place, and that's why this project has gone beyond our planning, and our planning is based on the amount of hours you've put in. Alhamdulillah. Just the next question was, what have been the biggest challenges that you faced in doing all of this then?
Well, the biggest challenges were raising the money to do it, because it costs a fortune to print these things, in color, and also it's such a long process to get the work from Arabic into English, and then the English edited and properly footnoted and proofed over and over again and printed, and then to be able to take that and figure out how you say each thing. Sometimes I've gotten so scared I couldn't stand it. I did call up Dr. Omar the summer I was doing prayer, and he finally said, no, Ghazali is with you, but anyway. But I mean, it's, I hadn't, it's not hard, it's wonderful, I've never been happier in my life. I feel as though this was what I was born to do. I've been in Islamic publishing since 1979, and I'm now, gosh, not 79, but just about 76 years old. And it finally, at this age, it just shows it's never too late, everybody, to find the thing that gives you the greatest joy. But each of us has a gift to deliver.
It's interesting because you mentioned to me about ultimately that the deen is about khidmah, it's about serving, and we know about what a person receives when they serve, and this is probably one of your biggest contributions. I mean, I'm sure you've done a lot, but this is...
This is real.
Yeah, I mean, wherever I've been, I've always been saying that this is, in my opinion, pioneering stuff, and for madrasas up and down the country, I mean, not even, I've been saying the West, but clearly it's not just for the West. So, mashallah. There's a question that I've been thinking of for quite a while now, and we've been speaking about this, is how do we measure the success of this project?
Well, it took me about a year to get the Templeton grant. And of course, a Templeton grant also, Sheikh Hamza and Sheikh Abdul Hakim have these grants. And I got it in character development, but I didn't know it was going to take a year to write the grant. And the grant, when people give you a grant, they want proof that it works. And that's why we came up with the interactive website, thinking if people visited it, it would show that it was working or of interest. But it's only now, when I'm meeting people like you, that I can see that it's working. And even though it was going into many languages, Norwegian, Swedish, I said, why would anybody want Sweden? Oh, we have so many millions of Muslims, who would have guessed? But I didn't expect it to go into many languages, and I didn't expect it to have this kind of international thing. I mean, all I could do is just sort of work on it. But actually, it really, just coming here today and being with you has let me, and talking to some of the children, has let me see that it actually is working. And well, that's a good question. But it's really for parents and children, because honestly, if we don't do all this stuff, they're not going to do it. A story at school or a workbook page will not be able to compete with how a mother and father does this. So in a certain sense, this is a community program. And what I like is, that here at the Hub Club, the parents are coming and studying too. And if you have a homeschool somewhere or any kind of school, you could just email the chapters to the parents at home and get them on board. It's really going to take us all. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's quite interesting, because I was mentioning as well earlier that I felt every week when I was teaching the lesson, I felt it was more applicable to me than the students.
Me too.
And so, subhanAllah. And that's the secret in these things. I think that's the secret in our deen, really. Even when we're taught, the Prophet ﷺ says that convey from me, even if it's one sentence or one verse. And it's really interesting when we think about that. What does that mean for anyone? Just if you've heard a verse or heard a saying of the Prophet ﷺ, for you to now go on and convey that. Well, there's something that you take back for yourself every time you convey that. So it's quite interesting. Obviously, this journey has been quite a long journey, this project, which I would like to call it's been quite a journey. What has surprised you, that's something that you didn't anticipate, but you've come across, whether it was a positive thing or a negative thing? What has been something that you didn't really see coming?
We're just Muslims coming in from all over the place, you know, offering services, offering to help, saying, I'll illustrate a workbook from my heart. You know, it's just to see the community coming forth on this has been, so edifying and so beautiful. I think that, well, just being here, just having Adiba be in touch with me and just say, she said, I was lying in bed with bronchitis in Louisville, Kentucky, and she called and she said, you know, I've been following this project for a couple of years, and I thought, really? You know, and then, because I have no sense of what's going on, and then here I am with you. It's just so blessed. What a wonderful company of souls you have in this community.
It's actually, it reminded me of when I first listened to that critical importance of Imam al-Ghazali in our time, you know, that famous talk of Sheikh Hamza, where he quotes Bob Marley within the first few minutes. And you just think,
that video.
Yeah, that video.
Yeah.
And I remember listening to that, and I saw this project being mentioned. That was like 5, 6 years ago, 7 years ago. And subhanAllah, here we are, and it's coming true. And to be a part of it, I remember when I got the phone call from Sahel saying, would you like to be teaching this part? I was like, okay. I just come back from, alhamdulillah. Now, one of the things, one of my role in this in what we're doing here at Hub Club has been about applying this for the teenagers, so the 13 plus range, up until like the 16-year-olds. And it's been an interesting challenge. Are you looking at maybe, are you going to be working on anything like that, and how you could take this to the kids who are the teenagers, or is that anything that you've been thinking about, considered?
They're like the missing link. It's for the parents and all children except the teenagers, because they're into their trip. But as we said, if we can get teenagers to teach it to young children, let them become teachers, they'll have to understand it and they will enjoy it. And I think that's the only thing we've come up to get teenagers involved with, except they like making those videos. All the videos that are coming in from all over the world are being made by teenagers. So I think just get our teenagers making videos. Maybe that's it.
Yeah, that's something that we experienced, was that they loved role plays.
Yeah, role playing.
They were always doing role plays. Sometimes they got out of hand when we did the zoo role play, because all these animals. But yeah, it's actually quite interesting, because I was with Usama Cannon actually just a few weeks back, and that was something that he mentioned to me as well, which was that giving them responsibility as well. So now, just a personal question that I had: which one from the 40 books that you've been working on, or you're working on currently, or from the ones you've already translated, which one would you say is your favorite?
The Book of Prayer.
And why?
Because it gave me prayer. Yeah. But of course, the Book of Knowledge was just amazing. I mean, they're all perfect. And we're not going to make the 40, by the way. Just, I'm too old. But would you all take it on? I mean, I'm going to get through Book of Hajj, inshallah. I have to raise the money for that, because the grant only takes me through Zakat, and I'm adding Siyam. So I'm going to work on the Book of Hajj.
Inshallah.
Any of you made the Hajj? Anybody gone on Umrah in this room? Well, I just took a little of this to the Umrah. Listen to this. When you get in your car to drive from Jeddah to Mecca, Ghazali is saying, when you get on your vehicle, his must have been a camel or something, consider that vehicle taking you to the Kaaba is your bier taking your body to its grave. And when you see through the columns the circumambulation, recall that the circumambulation of the angels around the throne, which is above above the Kaaba, know that there's people who have really struggled to get there, who've maybe come by boat from Indonesia carrying their food, and we fly in and out. You will be on the coattails of one of those humble people who saved for years, who's really, and who is moving with the angels. And when you go up to the Kiswa, hanging there, right? Just imagine that's the robes of Allah hanging down. Cling to them and beg His mercy. Let me just tell you, to use Ghazali when you go there, wow. I wish I'd been doing it all these years. You know, I mean, I don't know about the rest of the books, how it's going to go, because I'm old and tired and sick kind of stuff. But we're doing book 20, which is the turning point in the 40 books. It's the qualities about the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. And I thought that would be a good one to jump to. And there are different ones, I think, that might be better to go to, you know, because basically the others are really intellectual refinements. But if there are any of you all who want to take on this project and work with me and carry it on and would like to try to do this, welcome.
Alhamdulillah, I think that was, I mean, even what was just mentioned, and this is the beauty of Imam al-Ghazali, that he speaks in such a universal language, and these metaphors are so amazing. I mean, I just applied what you just mentioned there, as you were saying it, to this particular gathering right now.
Why not?
And it works. Sure. Because, you know, everyone's got a Kaaba inside, and right now, being everyone listening to you, you're almost a Kaaba for us right now. And this is the beauty of the human being, and how the macro and the microcosms work, right? I mean, we see this from, I mean, we open up any science book and we just see a world that's inside of us and a world that's outside of us, just as we are a world, where, you know, and He's Rabbul Alameen, so put that all together and you get something.
Well, things are so bad now, there's no place to go but in, and we've just been handed a map. Did people, any questions?
Yeah, sorry, yeah. So I just wanted to ask, does anyone have any questions? Bismillah.
Should we give him a...
So you can take this one.
Bismillah. Just with reference to the last point you made about the times of what we're going through today, as a scholar of Imam Ghazali, with reference to what he was going through at that time, with the chasm between good and evil and what was going on in the society, how would you compare that gap between his time and today's time, and how do you see things going forward?
You can answer that.
Please.
No, it's. I don't know. How would you see it?
I just think there's a gap, but I don't know how big it is compared to what he was going through.
I don't know, because there's no time.
Because he didn't. I mean, I've read very
Yeah.
little. I've read very little, and he didn't have a very good opinion about even some of the scholars of his time.
No.
And I've since reading those words, I've been coming to mosques and looking at scholars in a different light now.
Yeah. You know, there's no time. You and I are older people. All these people here think that they've got all the time in the world. We're all already dead in this room. It's that fast, you know. And I don't know how people have time to do a million things when you can barely use your time for this particular process he's talking about. You know, I mean, as Hamza Yusuf said, the Quran is just about death, you know, and we're all. I used to think when I was young, I'd read Omar Khayyam, and he would say things like, life is like the snow upon the desert's breast. I thought, wow, yes, it's quick. And all this, yes, it's quick. I had no idea. I've just watched 25 years go in 2 seconds. I just, it's like unbelievable. And then people look at me and they think I'm old. Nothing happened. I just look bad, you know, but I mean, I'm just the same me, you know. I hope better, you know, wiser. But I mean, the time thing, there isn't any time. Wal asri, well, we're really in wal asri, all of us together right now. So maybe it's just the same thing. The reason we can relate to Ghazali is that, and his issues, is that those remain the same, even if the whole outside just utterly trashes, you know? I don't know. But it's just that one thing. Each of us having to grapple with the fact that we know he is taking care of everything and not being trustworthy enough that we don't trust him enough, that we continue to worry and continue to think we're doing things and continue to think we own everything. It's really what we hope with this project for children is it helps to they don't have to paste on as much as I do at this point, that it can cut them at the beginning and give them a jumping, a leap into what is real, which is just returning to God and being pure before him. And well, I'd like to just say kind of a prayer for us. You know, may God draw us all back into his divine presence with our hearts purified. I mean, other questions or comments out there?
I'm just interested, as a woman, a scholar, did you face any barriers in doing in your work? And also, with Imam Ghazali, I've personally found his sort of representation of women problematic at times, and I know you're trying to make Imam Ghazali more accessible, whereas that for some women has been a bit of a barrier, and often it feels like Islamic scholars, especially those from the past, are men writing for other men. And I'm just wondering, have you come across that? Did you feel that? How did you overcome that? And how do you deal with maybe those gender dynamics in when you're authoring his work for children?
Well, I've never had any problems myself. You know, I mean, I've lived in the Middle East and everything, but we were about to bring out Al-Ghazali's book on marriage, and then somebody read it and didn't like the way he spoke about women. So do you know who Dr. Ingrid Mattson is? Yeah, so Ingrid and I were just in Bosnia together, and we're gonna work on that because there is also the fact he's in context, and we're in context too. It could be 300, 500 years from now, we won't see some of the things you and I hold as to be. So we're going to work on that particular book with annotations, and she's going to help bring that up to scratch. So it doesn't bother me that he said whatever he said about women. I haven't actually read it, but because for me, Ghazali is such a great being. Oh, let me just read this little thing here. Yeah, this is, this is from the introduction written by Hamza Yusuf to the Book of Knowledge. And he's talking about a man who was a great Maliki scholar who came to see Al-Ghazali just before he died. And he related his experience with Imam Al-Ghazali. He was at a retreat in Baghdad. And this is what he said about Ghazali. So this is like a hadith about Ghazali, somebody who actually was looking at him. He said, he was completely inner-focused on the divine and had left the world behind him. When I entered into his presence, I said, this makes me cry, you are the lost thing I have been looking for all of my life. That's what I find with Ghazali, that state of being that he reached. You are the Imam who will guide me. Our meeting was an epiphany of inward knowledge. I witnessed something from him that is ineffable. He was a man whom, if you saw him, you saw a manifest spiritual state. If you knew him, you knew a vast
Allahu
ocean.
Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
That's it.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
I mean, I remember my teacher when I was in Morocco. He used to always say that whenever you're speaking about something and the adhan would happen, that is a sign that what was being said was the truth. So that the reference for that is just my teacher, but I believe it. I was also going to say after that that we should just take in a few minutes just to take in what was said. I think it was his teacher, Sheikh Nizam, or Imam Juwaini maybe, who said that. But I was going to say let's just take a few minutes to just take that in, and I think Allah did it as such that the adhan happened and we were just forced to take that in. So alhamdulillah. What we're going to do now is break for salah, and we can, after salah, we can come back here, and if anyone has any more questions, we can continue this same format for maybe 10-15 minutes, if that's okay. And then after that, inshallah, if anyone has any particular questions, maybe if Sister Aisha's free.
I think what I'd like to add about that last passage is that I think Ghazali achieved the inner sunnah, not just, and I think what this whole program for children is, you know, in Islamic education we have talim, which is very important, and tarbiyah, and this is the tarbiyah. This is teaching the inner character development, the sunnah, and this is so important for children to establish at the beginning of their life, and I think, amen. Thank you.
Alhamdulillah. So yeah, again, so what we'll do is we'll break for salah. If anyone is still here and you would like to ask any questions, we can sit down and ask. But I'll just close this session anyway. Would you like to do a little dua, please? So, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم عليه يا رب العالمين. We ask and we pray that you send your peace and blessings upon the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and by the barakah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and by the salawat, and by your majesty, Ya Rabbal Alameen, we ask that you put barakah into this project, barakah into Sister Aisha's work, in her family, in her personal affairs and her public affairs. Ya Rabbal Alameen, increase her in her good works, and let the fruits of those actions be available for us to nourish ourselves and nourish others through those fruits. Ya Rabbal Alameen, protect everyone who has entered today, and by the sincerity of them being here, forgive all of us for our sins past and the future, Ya Rabbal Alameen, and allow us to leave this gathering in as clean states, and Ya Rabbal Alameen, help us to continue the work of the Prophet ﷺ and contribute towards his legacy as we have seen, and inspire within us to also play our roles in all of this, Ya Rabbal Alameen, and any particular things that Sister Aisha needs, Ya Rabbal Alameen, help her to attain those, and help us to also be a means and a part of that through supporting, donating, and whatever else, Ya Rabbal Alameen. Bisirri Surat al-Fatiha.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله هيا على الصلاة هيا على الصلاة هيا على الفلاح هيا على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله. استقيموا رحمكم الله. الله أكبر.
الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. وعنده مفاتح الغيب لا يعلمها إلا هو ويعلم ما في البر والبحر وما تسقط من ورقة إلا يعلمها ولا حبة في ظلمات الأرض ولا رطب ولا يابس إلا في كتاب مبين. وهو الذي يتوفاكم بالليل ويعلم ما جرحتم بالنهار ثم يبعثكم فيه ليقضى أجل مسمى ثم إليه مرجعكم ثم ينبئكم بما كنتم تعملون. الله سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. وهو القاهر فوق عباده ويرسل عليكم حفظة حتى إذا جاء أحدكم الموت توفته رسلنا وهم لا يفرطون ثم ردوا إلى الله مولاهم الحق ألا له الحكم وهو أسرع الحاسبين. الله. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. آمين. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد في الأولين وصل على سيدنا محمد في الآخرين وصل عليه يا ربنا في الملأ الأعلى إلى يوم الدين. اللهم تقبل منا صلاتنا وصيامنا وركوعنا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم ارزقنا زيارة بيتك الحرام. اللهم ارزقنا زيارة بيتك الحرام. اللهم أنت السلام ومنك السلام وإليك يرجع السلام. أدخلنا دار السلام. تباركت يا ذا الجلال والإكرام. وصل اللهم وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه الأخيار وسلم تسليما كثيرا. آمين.
billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. So I'm not sure if anyone has any questions. If you have questions, then we can take a seat and we can continue that format. So does anyone have a question? That if they have a question, they can come to the front, then we know we're going to sit down. You have a question? Okay, so what we'll do is we'll sit down, because I know a few people have got questions, but they're not saying they've got questions. Assalamu alaikum. So if I could ask everybody to sit down, inshallah, to take their seats.
we just answer questions.
Question and answers, yeah. So we can leave them.
Oh, that.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa barik wa salli alayhi. So, yeah, just any more questions, or if anyone has anything that they'd like to ask or add.
By the way, I think that was a very good answer to the question. You did say you didn't have the answer, but I think you had a very good answer for that one. Thank you for that. Just one other one. Is that, again, with reference to the teachings of Imam Ghazali and your own experience of life. You know, with reference to making a change in life, for example, Imam Ghazali made a change from becoming a scholar of having the highest seat of learning at that time, to leave that and go away, then to come back again. These are major changes, and that's what this work I see is making a change in life. Now, some changes are small step changes, others could be huge changes. For example, somebody could be working in a career for 30 years, then one day thinks that, you know what, it's 30 years of my life, but now I think I need to make a change for something else. Now, from your experience of life and the person of modernist of this society and your knowledge of Imam Ghazali, you can do istikhara, for example. You can do an istikhara, you know, salah istikhara, etc. But a little bit more than that. I mean, could you say something about that? Your advice to someone? What would be your advice to someone who wants to make some big changes in their life?
This is what I do, all right? Because we can't really change our lives, can we? You know, I mean, we don't usually walk out the door. And I think what I'm coming to is that what everything is about presence. Presence before God, presence before people. And I think what we have to do is get to a point where when we're with a person, we're present to them. Certainly children don't want presents, they want presence. And there's a wonderful Franciscan monk in the Southwest in America called Richard Rohr, who's a great lover of all the traditions. And we were together with him, and he said, when we meet each other, we see each other as other, because we're doing it from here. But if we greeted each other with our hearts, and when we saw the other, we literally saw them with full love from our heart. And that's what we should be doing. And every time I remember to do it, it's just amazing. I mean, I was in the Atlanta airport, which has a crossroads where there is more fast food than you've ever seen in your life. And there were a group of people sort of waddling up, maybe 300 pounds each, you know. And I thought, oh, God. And then I thought, what am I thinking? You know, they're human souls. And I just moved my consciousness from here to here and thought, love. And they started glowing, you know, their light of their hearts. And everyone deserves our mercy. You know, the people in the worst trouble that we look down upon, you know, and if we don't start making that move to literally seeing from our heart, you know, and really trying to really participate in that love which Allah is, that substratum of all being, we're just going to stay separate, floating around, bouncing. So I'm trying to do that. It's really hard, and I forget to do it. But the few times I've remembered to do it, it was unreal, you know. I mean, to a point that I had a friend of mine, she's a professor of Islam, she's a convert, and her daughter was born with spina bifida, and every time she went to school, she peed on herself and had no friends and had a fit. And the school would call every day and say, come and get her. And this is a great Islamic scholar. She does tafsir right now. She's big. And she was thinking, now, how can I deal with this? Now her husband has left and she's dealing with this daughter. So she thought there are two ways. I can either, every time they call from school and they say your daughter has had a fit, she could think, oh no. Or she could pretend she's the prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. Would he ever think, oh no? No, he would just go and deal with it. So I think part of the sunnah that I'm trying to reach in my heart is to quit thinking, oh no, you know, and try with the problems that are in front of me of, oh yes, oh Lord, you know, because everything is in his will, you know, and when he sends us illnesses and terrible things, I've had experiences being paralyzed with Guillain-Barré for a year, and I learned in the end I was bearing my illness. I couldn't move, everything hurt. And I didn't complain, because you don't complain, right? We know that. But also there's a hadith which says, all illness, all suffering is to purify us. And if this brief time we've got in a body is for purification, alhamdulillah means that every single moment is an opportunity to purify, because you know, God's blessings and trials are really the same thing. If we just all had blessings, we just veg out, you know. But the truth is that by going back and forth, blessing, trial, it's alhamdulillah, because the aim of that is to center us to the point of purification. So I think I'm trying with all the people that are driving me crazy in my life, you know, and there are plenty of them. I tell you, as a publisher, you just can't, your hair would stand on end. Everything, I mean, just quit thinking, oh no, and start saying, oh yes, this opportunity, this moment of frustration is a moment to practice detachment and mercy. And if we used every single second, you know, and we made the right decision to use it as, to have the correct state of being, we'd be getting somewhere. But we have to consciously do that, you know, start finding ways to remind yourself and habits and stuff like that. But that's what I think I'm trying to do, because I don't think there's any time. And I think I've blown it, basically, you know. But, I mean, I'm doing what I can, but not enough. So, that's my answer.
Any other questions?
Thank you for your time. You said that this project that you're doing now, Imam Ghazali's the books, is different to your other projects. What was so different about this project that you're continuing at the moment?
Well, I publish with the Islamic Text Society. We started the Ghazali and scholarly works, and in Fons Vita I've done the fiqh al-mazahib al-arba, the Islamic law according to the four schools. That took 30 years to bring out. That's how hard it was and how long. Some of the books take 20 years. And they're translations of Ibn Ata'Allah that you speak of, and As-Sulami. And really the idea is to keep the great spiritual heritage of Islam in print, beautifully produced, impeccable scholarship. But then you think about it, and how many people do we know that are going to read Ibn Ata'Allah? Maybe they would. Abada Runda, As-Sulami. And be able to, who's reading those books? And I've had a lot of young people just recently say, our generation isn't reading all this stuff. You know, we like videos and other things like this. But so it's different, because the Ghazali project was sent by God to me to like wake up, you know, and try to get myself together at the 11th hour. But it's also because I'm a grandmother and I have grandchildren, and I'm looking at them, and I'm worried for them. Think of my own children, I think, did I really raise them correctly? Sure, they read Ibn Ata'Allah, they did all of this. But like, you know, it's Ramadan, we're fasting, it's Ramadan. I didn't get into the inner depth of it, you know. And it's just, I think this is a different project, because this has to do with something that's accessible to everybody, not just scholars or people who are big readers, but it's something available to a 3-year-old, you know, so that's what makes this different from all the books I publish.
We'll have one last question, inshallah, if anyone has any questions.
You mentioned that this project was for teenagers as well, which I didn't know before. I thought it was for younger children. My question is that a lot of the stuff that Imam Ghazali says is about how to practice your religion, the things you can do and can't do. And the kind of struggle that we're facing with young people is they don't want to be around religious people or come to religious gatherings because they feel we're going to stop them from doing some of the stuff that they're doing that may not be Islamic. How do we deal with that when we have young people saying, I don't want to come to any of your circles?
I think everyone's sick of should and should not.
Yeah.
And what I think we're doing here, it's like you're going on a diet so you can't eat things. But if you went on one where you're doing something that sounds positive and wonderful, I'm going to start eating vegetables or something, and it's a positive move. So what I think is this whole thing has to be seen as a different thing, as an actual way of handing young people something fun and real to do that's positive and beautiful and going somewhere. It's not more negativity. We're not really talking about hell. This is not something that we are hoping they're going to do from fear of going to hell or from having their parents mad at them. This is something we're hoping that people see as a huge, fun, wonderful, beautiful thing to do with themselves, and it's theirs. You know, it's a different kind of direction to take. I don't know how, I mean, in schools, do you think you can get that idea over to the kids? You could just, hey, you're going to die soon and it's your heart. Take it or leave it. I don't know what you say to teenagers. I mean,
so what would you
I
say
like
to
the idea of the lady had earlier, Shabana, that she has a school here. It's 1,200 teenage girls who are just not into this. It's a Muslim school. And she does shocking things, like, remember what she told us about the check, and also she said they're doing something. All of a sudden, she just have one girl come up and pretend she dropped dead in the classroom. And what was the sign she was holding? What if you...
I came back, but will you come back, something?
Oh, that's good. So she just had some girl suddenly fall down and pretend to be dead. And everybody's like, what? Just break it up. And that's what she's so good at, Shabana, coming up with activities that shock teenagers. You know, or she also, when doing zakat, she gave them a check signed by the school, and they could write it for as much as they wanted. And then they had to figure out how to break it down, how much zakat they owed on it. But on the back of the check, they had to write all the things they wanted. You know, and then they start to get a picture of what they're after. And she even said, she didn't say it to us, that she said to some of them, well, if you had a choice of all this stuff or to be with your family in paradise, which would you go for? I mean, so I think we need to come up with some exciting things, and you might be good at this, that will help teenagers. But you know, I tell you what, teenagers are spiritual people, and they really are looking for meaning. If I look back in my teenage years, already they know people have died, right? Friends in a car accident, whatever, you know. So I think there's a lot of real intelligence in the teenager that's special beyond children, because they are really grappling with life and death and meaning. And I think if you can turn it around and make it go in that direction, it wouldn't be a bad idea.
Yeah, I think one of the things that, like when it comes to teenagers, when it comes to teenagers, I mean, the biggest thing that they appreciate and the language that they speak is sincerity. And I think that sincerity. And I think that whatever we do, we just start there. Whatever you do, even if you're going to promote a do and a don't, which you said is not really the best thing to do. I mean, even the don'ts especially, and even when they say do this so that you don't go to this, you know, so it's just very negative, and like, you know, you're right about the positivity, but before you start, like, it's just be real and genuine, and then let things come from there. But there's all these, I mean, there's one of the things we did 2 weeks ago at a camp in South California. There was a retreat that we had, and one of the things that the kids did was that they looked at each other. So one person sits on one chair and the other one sits in front of him, and he says to him, "If I never see you again, I want you to know, and then they just fill in the blank.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah, it was incredible. But there were so many things that they did. I was saying to her that they had on Tuesday we did one session with the kids. That it was like this. If you really knew, it was just 5 kids in a circle, and no one could speak about what was going to be mentioned, and no one could speak when another person's speaking. For 3 minutes, it's your turn. Then after your turn, it's yours. And each person would say, if you really knew me, you would know that.
Write these down.
Incredible. I've written them down. Incredible. We've got a retreat next week with a camp, and we're going to be doing some of these, inshallah. Brilliant. I'll give you, inshallah. It was basically, if you really knew me, you would know that. And it was incredible. I saw 60 kids, and easily like half of them were crying, and I didn't see the other half because I was crying by that time myself, because I was also doing it. See, if I just said, you do it. No, I started it off.
What did you say?
Oh, I can't. Now you see, that's the you can't mention it. You can't mention it. But this is the beauty of it. I mean, it was amazing. But it's connecting and it's being real. The biggest thing that I saw from all of that whole camp was you just start with sincerity and everything else follows. And that's ikhlas, right? And we have a surah named after it. You have to have a chapter named after ikhlas. So
Yeah, we don't have to trick the teenagers. Let's just get involved with them like it's at, you know.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mental health issues. I think that's, if I can put it this way, I totally agree with you what you said earlier about Imam Ghazali and this project. We're in a crisis, and this is the way forward. This is the way through it. It's a solution. It worked before. It'll work again. And this crisis isn't new. It's, you know, we have it in every age. But in this age, because we live today and we see this around us, young or old, but mostly young, because it's tragic when that young life comes to an end before they do something, especially if it's to do with self-esteem issues, confidence issues, anxiety, depression, and that sort of thing. Within this project, is there sort of a way, a space to directly head-on deal with these mental health issues, especially amongst the young? Because I think that's very important. And you know, if you could sort of...
Well, what do you think? You give an issue and say how you think this could help.
I think meditation. I think meditation, zikr, is very important. You know, there's an inner side to it, but if we leave that to a side, what really comes with that is stopping of time, silence. That's very important, because we're constantly being distracted by the noise that we have around us. I mean, I don't really have an answer to it. It's just an idea. You know, I think everybody suffers from anxiety, from stress, and that sort of thing, which is a good thing in some ways, because it's a breaking. We've come into this world with this beautiful life through this really painful exercise that, you know, our mothers went through. But, you know, we came out of that. So, you know, if you look at it from that point of view, but how can I translate that into something that will help an individual get through that painful episode that they're going through at a young age, you know, kids 11, 12, 10, that sort of thing, and help them grow into this sphere that gives them enough confidence to learn and then use all of these things that Imam Ghazali speaks about. Like, I would say meditation and zikr, like that sort of thing, but how can that be incorporated into what, you know, the Ghazali project, like make it accessible for everyone? I mean, I don't know. That's why I'm asking you.
Well, I mean, there's a diagram that I've used sometime. If you just make like this on the blackboard and say that's the ocean, and the ocean, you know, is great, and it can be a symbol for the divine. Let's say it's the symbol for God. It's infinite, eternal, perfect, good, everything. And then that ocean, as we know, oceans throw up little droplets, you know, waves, and little droplets. So you're a droplet, I'm a droplet, lots of little droplets. And we know, inna lillahi inna ilayhi rajiun. We've come from it and we're going back to it. Think how many people in the modern world today don't think there's an ocean and there's nothing you're going back to and there's nothing you've come from. That's the malaise, really. But each drop, you and me, the center of our drop is the water, right? The fitra, you know, that divine presence. But do we identify with that? No. We have the little outer confining separative droplet, its outer edge. And that's our story, the museum of our life. You know, I'm so-and-so, I went here, I've been through this, you know, whatever it is. So people start identifying with the package. They're not identifying with their true identity, their sacred, divine nature, their real self. We're all identifying with an outer thing. Now, the outer thing is finite, is temporal, is not perfect. And that's where suffering is, because it's in time, it worries, it thinks, it doesn't trust, it worries, oh, what if, you know, or I wish that hadn't happened. You know, it's past and future regret. Remember Al-Junaid said, a saint is he who has no future, therefore he has no hope. And he has no past, therefore he has no regrets. He dwells in the divine, you know, he's Ibn Waqt, he lives in the present time. That presence we were talking about before. And so, so then, the little droplet that's suffering, we're suffering as long as we're identifying with our outward package, that these kids are, yeah, but what's the difference between us and somebody who, let's say, meditates, who maybe does, you know, La ilaha illallah, or uses a tasbih, you know, and tries to identify with the heart, the theomorphic essence. Because if you're saying Allah or any form of dhikr, you know, it's you can feel it here, it's in your heart. And it starts to help your heart remember who it is. And, you know, so practices to help a person identify with the real self, and Ghazali talks about the real self and the false self, are good because the inside is deathless. You know, if you're a saint, you've been, I am this, till you're out to the edge of the bubble. The whole thing is none other but he. I am nothing but that. And then, but the trick is to let people see that they're suffering because their package, I mean, what you will suffer over is different than what I will suffer because different packages wanting different things. So I think if they can be helped to understand the difference between the lower, outer, egoic nature, which is going to pass away, and learn to identify with the nobility, the fitra, you know, inside. Maybe if you just talked about it enough, they finally would. I mean, it happens to be the main plug of all the world religions. It's the basis of Hinduism, certainly. You know, the little self and the greater self. So I think that's what I just keep talking about, and get them to draw it and do things like, let's see what the outer package can worry about. Let's see how far down the line it can go. And what if you were here instead? You know, where are your problems here? Maybe something like that, you know? Yes.
I was just going to say that there's no more questions now. Oh, sorry.
If I was to look for a lowest common denominator in this, about the teenage problem or
Yeah.
the young person problem, I think most people here have gone through the British education system, and you know, in the secondary school, when you're in year 9, you know, when you go to secondary school, you have year 7 and 8. In year 7 and 8, the children have attention from the teachers for various reasons. 10 and 11 and 12 have attention because they're going through GCSEs. Do you know year 9 children always misbehave? And I often think that that's when they're rebelling because they need attention.
At what age is that?
Yeah, it's about 13, 14. And so that's what I think, like Sheikh Hamza Yusuf spoke about it, maybe John Taylor Gatto as well, about adolescence and how that's a modern man-made phenomenon, where when a child wants attention, we just say, oh, they're rebelling, let them go. But I see the children saying, please help me, I don't know what to do, and I don't know how to ask for help. So I guess the lowest common denominator in this is finding a way to engage. So when they're rebelling, you have to find a way to engage.
Yeah, and you know, really, if you get them young enough, you know, to think of, you know, my little granddaughter saying, not my true self, not my real self. She was little. They know. But, you know, in the Book of Knowledge, in the workbook, about chapter 30, we deal with the 3 nafs, and there's a drawing of a bed that they can color, and a little girl lying in bed with her alarm clock, and her mother is standing at the door saying, like, get up for school. and then the three clouds, the thought clouds, and it says lower self. I'm going to pretend I'm asleep, right? And then the blaming self saying, you know, it's mommy, she's trying to get you up for school or something, like get up. But then over that, you have the nafs al-mutma'inna, the witness self. Think how many times in the morning I'll think, all right, I don't want to get up. I'll just lie a few minutes more in bed. Lower self, blaming self. But you know, once you're up, you'll feel fine, right? I can actually watch that conversation. Isn't that something that you can watch yourself doing that? But if children can be told from early, so they start seeing all the, and then they maybe they don't want to keep identifying with the one that's, you know, doing the wrong thing. I mean, I think you have to just make it really clear what's going on. Otherwise, people are just walking around in a muddle, feeling confused and upset and angry and left out. But who is left out? Not the real self. I mean, maybe we should make a huge deal on the self, you know?
So what does the last one say?
Huh?
What did the last one say? The nafs al-mutma'inna, what does the...
Just watching. I feel it.
Didn't say anything?
Just watching.
Interesting.
Yeah, but I think the nafs al-lawama is its agent. But you know, Ghazali points out, if you have a good thought, it's from an angel. Visit the person in the nursing home. If you don't act quickly on your good thought, help mother. Within moments, the waswiso comes in and figures out why you shouldn't do it. There was a friend of mine here named Gay Eaton. He was a scholar here in England. And he was getting near death, and every day in America I'd think, well, I'll call him, oh, the time is wrong, it's 5 hours. Oh, if I call now, he might talk a long time and I only have 5 minutes. And he died, and I never called him. And you know, I had the thought every day because, you know, you think of someone sometime and they call from the other side of the world. So we're all connected by little invisible rays. The whole thing is, we're already set up. So when you have a good thought, just, Ghazali says, immediately. And you know, like I'm telling you this, I can remember it because I saw where he wrote it in one of these books and I said it clearly for children and maybe I did an illustration. This stuff is usable to me now because it's on my fingertips. So just read the children's books. You don't have to read the adult's book. Don't, you know, I've already gone to the trouble to put it as a sound bite. So, but of course, Ghazali's great, you know.
Alhamdulillah, I think we'll leave it there, inshallah. So thank you again for your time. Jazakallah khair. May Allah reward you for all that you're doing, and in particular this evening, and for taking your time out and sitting with us. I'd like to also thank the organizers for putting this event together.
And our cameraman.
And our cameraman for being patient with us as well. And in fact, if you saw anything good at this project, it wasn't down to the teachers and so on. It was actually down to the organizers who allowed the teachers, who gave them the resources, who were very patient with them and allowed us to do what we're doing here, because we know there's not many madrasas that would even provide faltifs or stuff. So alhamdulillah for that. So thank you.
You're
and thank you.
pioneers is what it is. Yeah. You just bit the bullet and you're doing it. Good. So we're a family here. So I've been so honored to be in your company and in your presences, and you've been nice to put up with me. And
Jazakallah khair again. Thank you. Thank you so
I'm going
much.
to go back to Kentucky. My husband wants food. I've been gone for 3 weeks, so got to go cook.
Okay. Alhamdulillah. Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.